I just cleaned that. I mean, what goes on? Well, this day couldn't get any weirder. Oh, me and my big mouth. Hello everyone, I'm Kevin, otherwise known as BX257, here to bring you another 1980s and 90s GI Joe toy review. And today I'll be taking a look at the Cobra Underwater Demolition Specialist, the 1992 Eels, or Eels version 2. And I would be holding a card for the Eels card back, but half my collection has mysteriously vanished. Anyway, the number 12 figure in the 1992 series of basic GI Joe figures makes his first comic book appearance in the Old World comic run of GI Joe in issue number 130, and makes his first animated appearance in the animated second season episode titled Messenger from the Deep, where strangely enough the animators decided not to use a updated Eels form, but used the Cobra Sludge Viper form from the Echo Warriors line. I mean, I guess the color scheme is similar. And they did give him some red flippers, so I guess it's the thought that counts. Taking a look at the Eel version 2's accessories, he comes with a spear gun. The spear gun has a big 3-pronged fork at the front, kind of like the 1986 monkey wrench's weapon. Next, he came with a pair of silver plastic flippers. And if the flipper design looks familiar, that's because they are a remold from the 1990 Iron Grenadiers Undertow figure. There's no real left or right to these flippers. And do bear in mind that the Undertow flipper is a flat gray and may look a little bit similar in some photographs. By the year 1992, all figures, except for some driver figures, came with a black plastic stand. So this is just the regular Hasbro black plastic stand. Nothing particularly unique or fancy about that. And finally, he comes with what the contents list on the file card calls a torpedo launching robot shark / scuba pack. By 1992, all figures came with some type of a gimmick, and this was the Eel version 2's gimmick, which was incredibly memorable. Let me just put it that way. It's a very interesting construction for this robot shark. The fins are actually kind of rubbery. The back tail fin actually does swivel. And of course we have a slightly opening mouth to put the missile into. And the launching button is actually this back fin. This isn't the dorsal fin. I guess this is the dorsal fin, but this is some type of fin on a shark, I guess. So this is what you push down and launch your missile, or torpedo in this case. Quite nice. Of course, this thing also has a back peg, because this actually doubles as a scuba pack. So you could just put it on the figure like so. And as you can see, the shark is actually a tiny bit longer than the figure. So you do have to sort of tuck the back fin to an angle if you're standing the figure up straight. But of course, it doesn't really matter if you're using it as some type of a jet propulsion or the oxygen tanks. I'm going to exercise some restraint and not tell you what I think this thing looks like. But it is what little detail we have on these types of missile launching missiles. And in order to reload your shark, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say, you have to have the notch upwards and just open up the jaw like that and press it in until it clicks. To be honest, I'm really impressed with the amount of detail there is on this shark without being overly mechanical. It's just the right amount of detail. To be perfectly honest, I don't think that I'll be keeping my Eels and his robot shark together in my collection and displays, because I just think the Eels makes a very good driver figure or crewman for a variety of Cobra aquatic vehicles. So what do I do with the robot shark on its own? For now, I think I'll be hanging it up in the inner walls of my Cobra Terrordrome like some futuristic fishing trophy. But I don't want you to think that I really hate this thing, because I don't. I mean, sure, in universe, it may seem a bit goofy, but as a toy, it's actually kind of, well, charming and fun. But it did get me thinking, is the robot shark too silly for Cobra? Or is it within the wheelhouse of their exotic technology which they normally employ? Now, I wanted to ask these questions to GI Joe collectors, and normally I would just go onto the forums and just ask there. But instead, I wanted some face-to-face time with some real GI Joe collectors on their opinion. Hello? Oh, hello, Hooded Cobra Commander 788.
The robot shark is not too silly for Cobra. In the animated series, and to a lesser extent in the comic book, Cobra had technology that was at least as silly as this. So the robot shark is about par for Cobra. It is, however, a little too silly for my tastes.
Yeah, that's understandable. As a matter of fact, while I have you on the line, have you noticed anything strange about... Oh, hang on, I have another call on the line here. Oh, hello, New Tuvero 2.
Oh, hey, Kevin.
Okay, then. Now, this may be a weird question, but has anything happened to your... Oh, hang on, I have another incoming call. Hello? Oh, hello, McDowin.
I really liked the Shark missile launcher that came with the 1992 Cobra Eel for a couple reasons. One, it was just a fun toy, and a little missile launcher pushed the button and shoots out. Most of the time, I would pretend that it was a camouflaged missile, and so instead of actually pushing that button for the missile to fly out, I would just throw the shark right into the side of a GI Joe boat and pretend the whole thing was a missile. And that was a lot of fun. The other ways that I would play with it, and I really enjoyed it, was because Transformers had crossed over with G.I. Joe at least once before, I knew that there was a connection there. And so I'd just sometimes pretend that the shark was a Transformer that couldn't transform at the moment. It was stuck. But anyway, I really liked it, and I give it a good thumbs up.
Okay, I get it. Now, while you're on the line, a funny thing just happened to me at... Oh, hang on, I have another incoming call. Hello? Oh, hello, Caesar Moo.
Wait, what did you guys ask us? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Is this silly or is this cool?
Awesome.
Awesome? Whether fun school or domestic?
Yeah. The fun schools are funky, but they're still cool.
They are. So, Cobra definitely used these on a regular basis.
Oh, I think that just severed my connection. Oh well, I guess I'll ask about this after my review. The Eel version 2 design is like a lot of 1990s designs. You can either learn to appreciate the effort that went into the gimmicks and the type of sculpting and details, or you can just flat out deride it for its rather silly color scheme and the fact that most of them look like, well, Spider-Man villains rather than someone who would be taking on a military action. And, well, the Eel version 2 definitely falls into that latter category, but I still learn to appreciate it nonetheless. There are a few little things which are very interesting, such as the fact that the helmet is actually missing a paint app, which I really wish they had included. If you can see on the artwork here, there would have been some black right underneath his visor there. And I think that sort of represents where these molded cutouts are. I mean, it still has the same idea, sort of a, I guess, sort of like animal teeth or shark teeth or something like that. But I really wish they were painted in. Unfortunately, he is sort of monochromatic in that regard. Basically just his red visor and his Cobra symbol on his bicep there are really the only pops of color between the yellow and the blue. According to the file card, these things are supposed to be hull slashing spikes. The other thing too is that his vest is supposed to be some type of air bladder as well. So that's one of the reasons why he doesn't have traditional tanks on him. However, he does have the mechanical shark in order to act as backup tanks anyway. He does have a very 1990s superhero vibe with these like fins on his head, this big red visor, which I wish was really smaller. It shouldn't really dominate his helmet, but it kind of does. In what amounts to a very blatant cross-sell, starting from 1992, some figures will actually have a vehicle specialty, even though they're not officially drivers. And of course, the Eels version 2's specialty was the Cobra RAT hovercraft. And when I did my review on the hovercraft, I noted that he doesn't really look all that good in here. Admittedly, the RAT does have a closing canopy, and you can't really see very much of him. As I don't have an example of the 1990 Cobra Hammerhead, the most colorful aquatic Cobra vehicle that I can think of is my 1988 Bug. And I think he actually goes very well with this. I think he blends in quite nicely on those colors and looks perfectly at home sitting beside the equally brightly colored Secto Viper. And finally, here's an idea I borrowed from GI Joe Berg. It's the 1986 Hydro Sled, which I think the blue goes very nicely with the main blue of the craft, and it even has enough space for his robot shark. So a rather obvious comparison for me to make for the version 2 Eels is to compare them to the version 1 Eels from 1985. And this is a totally different era of design, clearly, because he has a lot of mechanical details, a lot of stuff on him, which kind of makes him look more like a traditional frogman. Of course, the colors are far more subdued, the big red bullseye on his chest notwithstanding. They really don't look related to each other at all. Which isn't to say that there isn't a design lineage going back to other Cobra divers, such as the 1988 Hydro Viper, who is far more organic looking and, to be perfectly honest, far more crazy looking than even the version 2 Eels. I think the only thing that people deride is really the color scheme. But here, I think the purple and red is a little bit more subdued visually, even though it makes not much more sense than bright yellow does. However, there are some very interesting parallels. Like I said, there is a design evolution going on here, such as the fact that the Hydro Viper actually does come with a little animal companion, and while I wouldn't really call this thing an animal companion, the shark is definitely animal-like. And while not a Cobra, but still a bad guy, we have the aforementioned Iron Grenadier's Undertow figure, who came with a silver Barracuda. Again, more of an animal companion rather than a straight-up animal-looking device. Interestingly enough, for the Eels version 2, we have an opposite number on the GI Joe side released within the same series and the same year. In version 3, Wetsuit and his torpedo-launching Sea Sled. While I can argue that Wetsuit here is the more practical, he's just not as visually interesting as the Eels with his giant robot shark and these crazy colors. Now here's the funny thing. For 1992, Hasbro released quite a lot of aquatic toys, more so than I think any other year in the vintage run. We have the Eels, obviously, Wetsuit, as I just showed you. We have the Barracuda submarine on the GI Joe side. We have the Cobra RAT hovercraft on the Cobra side. And within the Eco Warriors subline, we have Deep 6 version 3, who came with a large animal companion in the shape of a large dolphin called Finback. Now, look at the fancy colors on this particular fellow. I think these two look like they should have been rivals rather than the Eels and Wetsuit. Now here's a customization I've seen done in a couple of forums. If you don't have the skills to do some paint work and make him a bit more subdued, you can just get rid of his accessories and actually load him up with some cheap Battle Gear Accessory Pack number 6 Blue Eels accessories. We have the backpack, oxygen hose, his spear gun, and of course his flippers, giving him far more blue on the character than the yellow. Of the 12 basic figures released in 1992, only 9 of them were re-released the following year in 1993 for the Battlecore line. And of those 9, only 2 of them did not come with their original weapons. Now granted, all of the figures were recolored and so were their accessories. But Roadblock, who was a recalled figure in 1992, obviously didn't come with his accessories. But for reasons I can't understand, the 1993 Cobra Eel did not come with his robot shark or any of the other accessories, except for his swim fins, which were now done in a color matching the details on his scuba suit. Instead of the robot shark, he came with a generic frame of red weapons and a generic Cobra missile launcher. Not really sure what happened to the robot shark, even though there was clearly nothing wrong with it. We have sort of a purple instead of the blue for the 1992 figure. The 1993 figure also did not have any paintwork on his stomach. The Cobra symbol on his bicep is also missing. Now, as I said, there was clearly nothing wrong with the robot shark because in the early 2000s, Fun School, which is the Indian manufacturer of GI Joes, released their version of the Cobra Eels, and while the blue was very, very light blue, it was clearly based on the 1992 version because not only does he have the paintwork on his stomach, but that version also came with the robot shark. If you're looking for a 1992 Cobra Eel version 2 on the aftermarket, I have to say that they're very easy to find, complete with all their parts and for a very reasonable price. I guess that 1990s surge of popularity hasn't really caught up to what really should be a very good troop builder. And yes, a very wacky one, but then that's kind of the nature of 1990s collections. I will, however, have to say that one very odd thing is when I was doing some research, I really wanted to take a look at some of the 1993 Cobra Eel version 3s from the Battlecore line, and I actually had a very hard time finding one. Now, maybe it's because the 1992 versions were overproduced, or maybe the 1993 versions were underproduced. I don't really know. However, if you are trying to find one of these guys, there's really only one thing that you really have to look out for, and that is this. The back end of the shark fin. As you can see, it's very easy to come out. It's just this one little rubbery nub which goes into there, and it's often missing on these robot sharks. Other than that, this thing is a very easy figure to find, and he is actually fairly sturdy as well.